I slept 3 hours a night for 49 years, and it cost me my marriage. Not all at once, slowly, while I thought I was doing everything right. I'm 81 years old now, and at this age, you don't try to make your life sound better than it was. You don't clean it up for people. You just tell it the way it actually happened, because there's no reason not to anymore. Most of the people who knew your younger self, they're either gone or they remember a different version of you anyway. So all that's left is the truth you carry. And sometimes it's heavier than anything you worked for. I wake up early even now. My body still thinks it has something to catch up to. 3, maybe 4 hours of sleep, and then I'm awake. No alarm, no reason, just awake. I sit in the kitchen most mornings, same chair, same cup. The house is quiet in a way I never noticed before. Not peaceful, just empty. And in that quiet, your mind starts going back. Not to the big moments, but to the small ones you ignored. The ones that didn't feel important at the time. That's where I end up most days, back in my early 30s. That's where things started to change. We had just gotten married, nothing dramatic about it, no big celebration, just a simple ceremony, a few people, and a quiet beginning. We moved into a small apartment, the kind where you could hear your neighbors talking through the walls. The kitchen barely worked. The sink leaked sometimes, but we didn't mind. At least, she didn't. She had a way of making things feel enough. That's something I didn't understand back then. I thought enough was something you grow out of, something temporary, something you tolerate until you build something better. She didn't see it that way. She could sit in that small place, drinking tea in the morning, and feel content. I remember watching her sometimes, standing by the window, sunlight coming in, doing nothing special, just being there. And she looked peaceful. I didn't know how to do that. Even then, my mind was somewhere else, thinking about what comes next, what needs to improve, what isn't enough yet. I had a regular job at the time, office work, long hours but predictable. It paid the bills. Barely sometimes, but it did. And for her, that was enough. For me, it wasn't. Not because I wanted more for myself, but because I was afraid of losing what we had. I had seen that happen before. Growing up, I watched how quickly stability can disappear. One bad decision, one missed payment, one unexpected problem. And suddenly, everything changes. That stayed with me. So I made a decision. I wouldn't let that happen. Not to us. That's how the extra work started. At first it was small, helping people with accounts after office hours, filling out paperwork, taking on things others didn't want to deal with. It didn't feel like much, just a few extra hours, a little more income. I told myself it was temporary, just until we felt secure, just until I could relax. But that feeling never arrived, because every time things improved, my expectations moved with them. A slightly better apartment meant higher expenses. More comfort meant more responsibility. And instead of stopping, I kept adding more. More work, more hours, more pressure. And slowly, something else started disappearing. Sleep. At first it felt wrong. My body resisted. I would sit at the table late at night trying to focus on numbers, and my eyes would close on their own. But I pushed through it, because I believed I had to. 3 hours became normal, sometimes less. And after a while, even that stopped feeling strange. It just became my routine. Wake up early, work all day, come home, eat quickly, go back to work, sleep for a few hours, repeat. She noticed, of course. She would ask me sometimes quietly, "Don't you feel tired?" And I would smile, like it didn't matter. "I'll rest later," I would say. I said that so many times, it became part of who I was. The man who doesn't stop, the man who sacrifices, the man who keeps going. It sounds admirable when you say it like that, but it's not. Not when you look at where it leads. In those early years, we still had time together. Dinner, conversations, small routines. She would tell me about her day, little things, things that didn't seem important, but I listened. I remember that clearly, because later, I stopped. Work started taking over the evenings, then the nights. I would come home later and later. At first, she waited. I remember one night very clearly. I walked in past midnight. The house was dark except for the living room. She was sitting there, not angry, not upset, just waiting. She smiled when she saw me, and I remember feeling relieved, like everything was still okay. I told her she didn't have to stay up. She said, "I know. I just wanted to see you." At the time, I didn't understand what that meant. Now I do. She wasn't waiting because she had nothing else to do. She was waiting because she wanted time with me, and I kept giving that time to something else. That didn't change overnight. She waited less, spoke less, adjusted. That's the word I would use now. She adjusted to my absence, and I didn't notice, because I was too busy being absent. Years passed like that. We moved into a better place, more space, better furniture, things that made life easier. From the outside, it looked like progress, like everything was working. And in a way, it was, just not where it mattered. We stopped eating together regularly. Schedules didn't match anymore. I would come home late, and she would already be asleep. At first, she tried to stay up. Then she stopped. And I accepted that as normal, because it made my life easier. There was one evening I still go back to. She had made dinner. The table was set, 2 plates, but I was late. When I walked in, the food was cold. She was sitting there quietly. She didn't complain, didn't ask where I was. She just stood up, reheated the food, and asked me how my day was. And I answered, without thinking, without asking about hers. That moment stayed in my life longer than I realized, because it wasn't about that dinner. It was about everything that followed. All the times I didn't notice, all the times I didn't ask, all the times I assumed there would be another chance. In my 40s, work became everything, not because I loved it, but because I didn't know how to stop. There was always something to do, always something to fix, always something to improve. And the more I worked, the less I saw what was happening at home. The silence between us grew. Not uncomfortable, just present. We could sit in the same room for hours without speaking. At the time, I thought that meant we were comfortable. Now I understand. It meant we had nothing left to say, or maybe we stopped trying to say it. She stopped sharing things with me, gradually. Stories from her day, thoughts, small frustrations. They didn't disappear. She just stopped bringing them to me, and I didn't ask. That's what stays with me. I didn't ask, because I thought everything was fine. Or maybe I didn't want to know it wasn't. In my 50s, the distance became normal. That's the dangerous part. When something feels wrong, but you get used to it, you stop questioning it. You accept it as life. We still had moments, holidays, trips, but even in those, I wasn't fully there. My mind was always somewhere else, thinking about work, planning the next step, preparing for something that hadn't happened yet. I thought that was responsibility. I thought that was love. But it wasn't. It was absence, disguised as effort. Then one day, there was a conversation. No argument, no shouting, just truth. We were sitting across from each other, late afternoon, soft light coming through the window. She looked calm, too calm. She said, I think we've been living separate lives for a long time. I didn't argue, because I knew she was right. I don't think I know you anymore, she said. That sentence stays with you. I tried to explain, tried to tell her everything I did for us, that I worked hard to build a life for us. She listened. And then she said something I didn't expect. I never asked for that version of you. It took me years to understand that. She didn't need more. She needed me. And I wasn't there, not in the way that mattered. We stayed in the same house for some time after that, but something had already ended. You can feel it, even when nothing looks different. At 69, we separated, quietly. No anger, no blame, just distance becoming real, after all those years. And suddenly, I had time, more time than I knew what to do with. I thought I would feel relief, but I didn't. I felt everything I had ignored, all the moments I missed, all the conversations I never had, all the times I chose work, thinking there would be more time later. There wasn't. Now I sit here, at 81, still waking up early, still making coffee, still thinking about a life that looked full, but had empty spaces I didn't see. If you're listening to this, I won't tell you what to do. I don't think advice changes people, but I will say this. Pay attention to the small moments, the quiet ones, because those are the ones that disappear first. And when they're gone, that's what you miss. Not the big things, the small ones. I used to say I'd rest later. It sounded reasonable. It sounded responsible. But it wasn't. Later came. But it didn't bring anything back. If I could go back, I wouldn't stop working. I wouldn't change everything. I would just be there more. In the moments that didn't seem important. Because they were. They were everything. And I didn't see it. Not until it was already over.